Na 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 na. Ooh, a mother is crying, yeah. A father is bawling too. Na 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 na. Ooh.
We're gonna have the Bucket Boys part 2 today, but there were some personal things going on in their lives. You know how it is working. On that line. In fact, I went to 87th Street, and one of the guys told me that Shaq and the guys were out there earlier on, and the police came and shoot them away. And they're on 79th Street, and I went to 79th Street, and they were not on 79th and State. So luckily, Shaq called me, and I heard his voice about 5 minutes ago. So I'm glad that he was not arrested or, subject of whatever, because I know, you never know what's happening these days. We see in the news all kinds of things. But our backup, Mr. Randy Sargent from the city of Buffalo, New York, is here with us today. Again, I'm your host, Dr. Peter K.B. St. Jean. I believe the show that comes on now during this time is a show on domestic violence, I believe. And our show, The Peaceful World Movement in Focus, usually comes on at 6 o'clock. But you can still call in. We're going to go until about for the next 20 minutes. We're going to take a break in 20 minutes, and then we're going to come back at part 2 of our show. So we're asking you to stick in with us. 312-738-1060. Let me just briefly introduce our guest for today, and then I'm going to ask him to introduce himself. Randy Sargent is already on the line. In Buffalo, New York. Randy and I worked on the front end in Buffalo, New York, with a variety of other groups addressing these issues of homicides and crime in our community. And Randy has a unique way of being able to address some of these issues. As a matter of fact, what I'm going to do... Hey, Randy, are you there?
Yes, I am, Dr. St. John. How are you?
I'm doing very good, man. Thank you so much for calling in, and thank you so much for being with us. How are things in Buffalo?
Oh, they're good. It's actually pretty hot, surprisingly. So thank you for the opportunity to be here with you. So
yes, well, Randy, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give the viewers here in Chicago a little piece. Maybe we're just going to run a minute or 2 minutes of Lessons from Homicides, the Buffalo story. We're going to run the clip of the movie before you show up in the movie and a little bit after you show up. So you will hear a bit of the audio. So stick in there with us, okay?
I can't leave. I can't leave. No! No!
Homicide is the killing of one human being by another human being. And Randy, you heard that voice. You remember it all? You have any memory of who that voice might have been? That was actually Brandon. That was.
Oh, wow, yeah.
As you hear that, Randy, what kind of memories does that bring back to you working on the front line in Buffalo, New York?
Well, just off the clip, I mean, that's just raw emotion that a lot of people don't get to see, that homicide actually that happens to these family members. Brandon was such a young kid at the time. Even now, today, he's so devastated by the death of his father, and he's not only lost his father, he lost two uncles as well.
Right.
And that's the raw emotion that the newspapers can't capture, that the media can't capture. That's why it's so hard for people outside of these communities to understand the pain that goes on off of each killing.
Yes, look at 312-738-1060. You're looking at the Peaceful World Movement in Focus. I'm your host, Dr. Peter K.B. St. Jean. We have Randy Sargent on the phone, calling in from Buffalo, New York. We are talking here about maintaining peace in the world. But oftentimes, unless we look at the impacts of violence and crime, sometimes we are not motivated to take action. Randy, let's step back a little bit and give our viewers here in Chicago, and later on we'll have this on YouTube and the rest of the world. Can you please introduce yourself, where you're from, where you live now, how you got to Buffalo, and that type of thing?
Sure. My name's Randy Sargent. I'm from Buffalo, New York, and I actually got into community activism in a unexpected way. You know, it all started. Can I explain?
Sure, absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll never forget the incident that really turned my heart towards the people affected by violence. I made a wrong turn down one of the side streets on Buffalo on the east side, and as I turned down, it was a one-way street, and I seen ambulance and squad cars just cover this area, and they were wheeling out a dead body. But while that was going on, there was kids in the middle of the street playing pickup football. And as I drove away, like, I just felt so, you know, like, just felt how desensitized our youth are becoming to violence, that they could literally, you know, just be playing football in the middle of the street, and even the dead body being wheeled behind them won't stop. It's just another day in their lives, and that really bothered me, that, you know, that didn't affect them the way it should have, you know.
What year was that, Randy?
That was in 2006.
Wow.
Yep.
So,
Then,
so now, what did you decide to do as a
it-
result of that?
Well, as you know, a year later, 2007, Devontae Murray and Alan Stepney were two young kids, 15, 16 years old, that were caught in the middle of a gunfire. Over 100 rounds were shot into a crowded shopping strip, and only these two young kids were killed in that act of violence. And because of that, I saw the father the next day. I seen him on the internet, and I seen him screaming and crying. The same raw emotion you just played is what I heard from the father. And it touched my heart so much that I just felt I had to do something. You know, and I didn't have much to offer in terms of monetary things or anything like that. So, being a Christian,
I'm going to show that clip of the movie so that the viewers can get a sense of what you decided to do.
Okay, we're doing a hunger strike. It's day 3. 2 little kids were murdered here in this plaza right here. There were over 90 shots fired from across the street. We're from Stop Killing Clothing. I have my partner here. He's supporting me, but I'm the only one actually starving.
Will I see my kids strong? Will I let them down? If anybody asks you where I'm going soon. If anybody asks you where I'm going soon. Making peace with my brother. 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 Making peace with my brother.
Yes, Randy, that brings back memories.
Yes, it does.
So tell us about. Do we have a caller here? Is there a caller? No. So Randy, tell us about the hunger strike. Why you decided at that particular time with that particular homicide? How long you stayed out there, and what was the outcome?
Okay, I just, like I said, I just felt the raw emotion from the father, and I have a child myself, so that just touched me in a way that I just knew I had to do something for him. So the only thing I was able to do was offer myself, and my plan was to draw attention by being on the very corner he was killed and refusing to eat until they bring the shooters into justice. And the reasoning behind it was, as long as someone was there and drawing attention, they wouldn't just let it go in the media. You know, we see it all the time where these homicides happen, and you know, they're 10-second fillers on the news, and then they're forgotten about the next day. And these kids, they needed justice, you know, so it was extreme, but it was that extremely important to me as well. So, and I stayed out there for 18 days and encouraged the community to speak up. As you know, back then there was that stop snitching street code that was so prevalent, you know, so people were honoring that so much, and it was just important to stand out there and remind these, you know, the community that these two young kids didn't deserve to die.
Wow. So what was how long did the hunger strike last again?
It was 18 days, and they did find there were two shooters involved, and one was sent to 50 to life, and the other was sent, I believe, for 20 years.
Yes. Now, what was it like? I mean, what type of response were you getting from the community when you decided to get involved in this hunger strike?
Well, when I first got out there, you know, people really wasn't understanding why I was out there. You know, being, I guess, a white man in a community, they just, you know, obviously, I mean, I would feel the same way. What is he doing here? I would want to know why he's out here. And after maybe 2 or 3 days, as the news picked it up and they showed while I was there, the community really embraced me far above and beyond what I would ever expect them. People would come out to offer me their clothes because it got cold at night. They would offer money to me. They did so much for me. We hugged each other. We cried. The kids came around the corner every night. It was just a really good. It was very powerful.
Now, Randy, we have our first caller. As I told you, this is a live show. Caller, thank you for calling. Caller, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Yes, thank you for calling.
I have a comment. You know, everybody blames the police department, but it would take 1 million police in the city of Chicago to be on everybody's block. When I was a kid, I'm 62 years old. You know, these teenagers, they have to have some place to stash these guns. These parents need to go back into their children's bedrooms and look under their mattresses and in their basements and locate these guns. They're not just walking around the street with these guns. These guns are being stashed somewhere. And until the parents start getting control back in their own homes, it's going to be continued. This is going to continue. It will have to take 1 million police to be on everybody's block in order to take care of this. But the parents need to step up and go through their drawers and under their mattresses and in their closets and in their garages and locate these stashes and turn them over to the police because most of these guns are illegal.
Yeah, caller, thank you for sharing that.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Randy, did you have a chance to hear what the caller had to say?
Yes, I did. I would like to respond to that, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, please.
Okay. I agree that there aren't enough police. And I also agree, you know, when I was on the hunger strike, if there were enough police, a lot of these police, not all of them, don't even care about the people that they're supposed to serve and protect. And of course, you can't say that about every police because there are good ones out there. But I witnessed it myself while I was out on the strike. They said some pretty obnoxious things to me while I was out there. And she's absolutely right. We as a community have to start taking care of our own, and we can't rely on the police to protect us. You know, it does have to start with each home and each person.
Randy, do you remember coming to my movie premiere of Justice Delayed, the John Walker story? Were you there?
Yes.
Do you remember the story about John's brother, Brian? You remember what happened with him? Brian Walker?
Was that the one with the girl?
No, that's the one whose 16-year-old son was shot. Here's what happened. John Walker, I did the movie Justice Delayed. John Walker,
okay.
And John Walker's brother, when John Walker's Brian was 16 years old, he and his friend were playing around with a gun. And they were going to go out, they were going to go out to rob somebody. And they didn't find somebody to rob at the time, whatever was going on. So they went back home and they were playing around with a gun. And according to Brian Walker, and he explains this to me in the movie, he put the gun in the small of his friend's back, not knowing that there was a bullet in the chamber. He pulled the trigger, and he witnessed his best friend die. So the guys are trying to cover it up, and so on. And eventually Brian said, no, I'm just going to have to face what I do, because they started to round up a bunch of people who was the suspects. They made up lies and people started to get arrested. Now, guess what happened when Brian Walker's last son, who was 16 years old, or his son turned 16, guess what happened? Well, in the same house where Brian killed his best friend, Brian Walker's 16-year-old son died from a bullet, supposedly from friendly fire. It's a kind of sensitive case, but supposedly he died from the hands of a relative, in a similar fashion that his son was killed. So when this caller in Chicago here is saying, I don't know if Brian Walker's parents knew where his gun, he had a gun in the house, and I don't know if his son's family members knew that his family members knew that there was a gun there. But what the caller is saying here is the real deal, that sometimes there are weapons in the home, and if you do not know they're there, you should be searching your home to find that out. Now, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to continue talking with our guest, Randy Sargent, here in Buffalo, New York, and he had another remarkable journey that he went on. We'll talk about it when we come back.
None of it's really actually getting through to people that this is a final act. This is not a movie. This is not a Wesley Snipes movie or Eddie Murphy where he's going to be in the next sequel. That when these people get killed in the streets of Buffalo, New York, they're dead forever.
Yes, we're back from our break with Randy Sargent, speaking in the first segment about the hunger strike, talking about his experiences, his situation in Buffalo, New York, of course, the relevance here to the city of Chicago. We're going to talk to Randy in the next segment about yet another milestone in his life, another form of protest that he put on in a minute. But before we do that, I actually want to start off by showing you this clip here. Just look at, for a minute at this clip here from Lessons from Homicides, the Buffalo story.
It's my son Devontae Murray. He got shot September 7th of this year. Passed away that Saturday morning, September 8th. Devontae was coming out the store, getting a t-shirt, and as he was walking, from my understanding, because I wasn't there, as he was walking, he just got caught in the crossfire, and one bullet hit him and he fell.
So here you have it, Randy, the clip on Devontae Murray. That's the young man that Randy Sargent was talking about. You guys saw Jackie Ross sitting in the corner there, and you saw the little parking lot that you saw. That was the parking lot where Randy Sargent was there on Delaware on the east side of the city of Buffalo. Randy, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
What kind of memories come back to your mind hearing this clip?
Well, I remember Mama Jackie Wells, who the woman we heard the first.
Right.
She literally stayed with me sun up to sundown every morning.
Right.
Every day she stayed with me.
Mm-hmm.
But there were so many touching stories. The one I remember the most was the testimony of a 9-year-old girl who told me how, in a calm voice, I don't know how she managed to do this, but she explained to me how she heard pop, 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 and she didn't realize there were bullets until she heard them fly past her bumper or past her ear.
Wow.
And then she said, yeah, so I looked around, I saw a car, so I ran to the car and I ducked behind a bumper. Then when the bullets stopped, I ran to the next car. And I just thought, our children shouldn't have to live like this. You know, and I had a 9-year. My daughter was the same age as that little girl when she was telling me this story. And I couldn't imagine that she would have to endure something like that.
Wow, yeah. This things, and you know, oftentimes people don't believe that those things are going to happen to them until it happens the first time. And sometimes when it happens, they lose their first child. If they have more children, think it's not going to happen to them. It's somebody else's turn. Then they lose their second child. And in more than one situation in Buffalo, New York, we saw persons losing more than 2 children. In fact, 3 children or 2 children and a grandchild and so on to this issue of homicides. Now, Randy, what else? What else have you done as a way of trying to get people's attention about doing something, whatever that something is, about trying to reduce this violence in our community?
Well, you know, we've done joint efforts with one another to do those things, but one of the recent things I've done was I did a over 500-mile walk from Buffalo, New York to Washington, D.C., and the young man we heard screaming so horribly in the beginning of the show actually journeyed with me for a part of that trip, Brandon Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because, you know, it's so sad, but the idea was to have a footprint, and in each footprint we would put a name of a homicide victim. So every mile that we walked, there would be a footprint with a victim's name, and it would go from Buffalo City Hall all the way to Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And the tragedy with that is, you know Murray Holman?
Right.
Yeah.
Tell the story.
He was supposed to trail me with all those footprints because there were too many that I could carry. And the day we left, his father got murdered. So he had to go back. But, you know, I was able to carry a lot of the footprints on my own, but we actually laid Brandon's father's footprint the same way. And he was crying, and he was so upset, he was vomiting.
Wow.
It bothered him that much. Even to this day, he can't talk about it without just losing it.
Yes, and there's so many devastated people in our communities. The trails that are left behind as a result of violence, as a result of homicides, is sometimes very well underestimated. Now, what happened after Murray could not make the trip anymore? What happened?
Well, what happened was I had to make a decision to go on my own, and a lot of what I had, I just had to keep one backpack. You know, and what was ironic about the whole trip is every city I went through, it was the same. There was a high-profile murder. If you remember, before I left, City Grill happened.
Right.
Here. Then I got to Warren, Ohio, and there was a big thing about real estate agents being killed. Then I got to Youngstown, Ohio, and there was a thing about these clergy members got killed in their car, 90 years old. Someone rolled up on them and shot them up. And every time I saw these stories, I would talk to people and say, "Don't you see what's going on?" And they'd say, "Yeah, I'm moving to Youngstown." And then they'll say, "Yeah, I'm moving to Buffalo."
Wow.
And I'd tell them, "Well, the people from Youngstown are telling me they're moving to where you are."
Wow.
So violence is everywhere. You cannot escape it, and it's time we stop taking the attitude of running from it and actually start addressing it.
Yes, in fact, let us look at another clip here from Lessons from Homicides, Randy. While I cue it up, let me tell you what it is. It's a clip made from that movie. It's the movie song is made for that scene. It's that scene where his name just escaped me. He was assassinated in front of his family member, Odessa Anderson's son. Let's listen to that clip. You won't be able to see much, but you'll hear the lyrics of the song. You might remember it from the film.
Lying there with his eyes closed. She called his name, but he didn't answer her. No, no. He couldn't hear her, but she told him that she loved him anyway. I sat there crying, helpless, I could feel her pain. I saw their daughter, wondering what was going on. She said, "Mama, what's wrong?" I felt so weak. Lord, how's this family gonna go home? She was with child, carrying their baby in her room. We gotta do something, and we've gotta do something soon.
So that was the clip with Odessa Anderson's son. You probably remember that scene. He was shot and killed in front of his fiancée and his 3 children. She was pregnant there at the funeral, banging on the side of the casket, saying she can't leave. And her mother, Odessa Anderson. You remember that scene of the movie, Randy?
Yeah, I do. There was a lot of scenes that just touched your heart in that movie. You did a great job capturing the emotion of homicide. A few people actually see, you know.
Yes, let's just listen a bit to hear what Odessa had to say there after the funeral.
No, he didn't deserve that. He had 6 kids he left behind. You know, they would never know their father. Well, the older ones know their father, but his baby would never know him. Terrence the third. You know, all I had is gone now. That was my only child. I am so angry behind this. You know, something has to be done about all this violence out here in the world today. You know, they just taking our young black men like it's nothing.
Now, so you continue on. You went from Buffalo, New York. You went from Erie, Pennsylvania, Youngstown, Ohio, Cincinnati, Ohio, and then you continued on. Tell us more about what you were discovering in your journey as you continued your way to Washington, D.C.
Okay, yeah, all along the journey, you know, there were things I never even thought about before I left. Like, you have literally no room to walk on the shoulder of some of these streets, and you have cars coming at you 70 miles an hour and semis, and, you know, you have your typical, you know, people full of hate that'll swerve towards you and swerve away at the last minute just to try to intimidate you. I got spit on, got, you know, names thrown out the window, and I felt extremely alone at sometimes. And on top of that, I had encounters with wild dogs as well. I've never even thought about any of that stuff before I left.
Wow.
But, you know, with all that said and all that I was going through and all the times my life was in jeopardy, even then I was safer than 15-year-old Dominic May, who was in her own living room, doing homework. You remember that? She got killed while I was out on the walk.
I remember that. Wow.
So, you know, just for me to be through all that danger, and I'm still safer than a young child in her own room in the inner city.
Yeah, that speaks volumes. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? It speaks a lot of volumes.
Yeah.
Now, when you went through, you got to Cincinnati. What was the next major city that you got to?
No, I didn't go. I went through Youngstown, Cleveland.
Cleveland, sorry, right.
I went,
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. What was the experience like in Pittsburgh?
What was that? I'm sorry.
What was the experience like in Pittsburgh?
Pittsburgh was, I didn't expect it to be so mountainous, to be honest, but there was, there was a shooting that happened there. It wasn't as high profile as the other two cities that I went to, but I mean, just the same voice echoed through every community in America that I went through is, we're moving. This is too violent here. I mean, every city you go through, even Buffalo, New York, I can't imagine what Chicago feels. I just heard they had 50 wounded recently over a weekend.
Yeah. In fact, it's a while. I'm still catching up with some of it, and some of my work has been centered internationally, and I haven't really grabbed on a lot with the Chicago situation because I'm still closing in on some things. I've just been here for 3 years now. Once you got down, did you make it to Philadelphia? You went through Philadelphia, Pennsylvania?
No, I went through Pittsburgh, then I went to Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
And then through right to Washington, D.C.
All right, you tell us about Baltimore when you come back, and then to Washington we have another caller. Caller, thank you so much for calling the Peaceful World Movement.
All this stuff that's going on around Chicago, and some people want to disagree with me, that's fine and dandy. We need to have some type of dialogue. When we stop messing around with these parents and start holding them much more responsible, and we need to encourage these children to sustain from having these children so young in life, because the cycle just keeps repeating, because we're not passing on knowledge at all, and we're letting these people have these children and just let them unleash in society. And until we start doing certain things, I'm tired of all these marching, all right? We always talking about, they put at these makeshift memorials and all that. There's a time, all this stuff is not working. We need to do something else right now, because this nice and dandy we had this dialogue. We need to do some things, like I said, we need to start holding these parents liable. I mean, seriously. And try to, like I said before, we have these children having children too young in life, and they're not passing certain things on. And when we look at a lot of things in society, we encourage bad behavior, and we don't really encourage good behavior at all, because a lot of different ways, maybe some other time I call in, we encourage bad behavior so much that how we reward it.
Yeah, well, caller, thank you so much for calling and giving your contribution. Randy?
Yes, she said something very powerful at the end.
Randy?
You know, there are so many good kids in our community, but in reality, they get none of our attention because we're so focused on the bad kids.
Randy?
The kids that want attention, which side do you think they would go towards?
Now, Randy, if you remember when you were somewhere in Pennsylvania or so, the night that I had sponsored the hotel room for you, wherever that was, you and I had a long conversation about the need for a paradigm shift. Do you remember that? Try to think.
Yeah, I'll never forget that. I was in Baltimore when that happened.
All right.
It was like a 3-hour conversation.
Right. Let's think about that. After we talk to the next caller, I want you to enlighten us, because I think that caller's conversation is related to that conversation. Caller, thank you so much for calling.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
I was really interested in the previous person's comment about what we need to do as such as holding parents responsible.
Yes.
First of all, you have to think of one thing. To create a positive environment, you have to offer something in return.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things we don't offer, you aren't offering young people jobs. You can go all the way back to the miseducation of the Negro. that particular book explaining what's going on in the world today.
Katja Woodson, yeah.
Then you think of Warner. In 1954, he says that we let the juice drip from our lips, but we don't practice what we preach. He talked about the sorting belt in the educational process. What good... In 40 years of experience, I watched Chicago Board of Education have actually one superintendent worth his salt, and that was Ruth Love. She brought a program to Chicago where if a child went from one school to the other, you could pick up there and take the child all the way through the paradigm. The thing that's humiliating more than that, we have a new mayor after 20-some-odd years of chaos in the city of Chicago. What have we offered? They have less activities for young people today than they did 50, 60 years ago in the city of Chicago. I wasn't transplanted here. I was born here. And I'm aggravated, humiliated, and frustrated because to build a people, you have first to teach the children. And you can't teach the children in dilapidated schools on one end of town and a substantial, sophisticated school on the other. You have the North Side Prep School, the South Side Prep School. They gave $40 million for the North Side Prep School that was state-of-the-art, built from the ground up. They took Mendel that was wore out 60 years ago and gave it to the black kids. And what did they do? Took them 8 years to even get a swimming pool, and they gave them $20 million. Now, when the new mayor came in, he was asked one question in particular, and that question was this: are you going to level the playing fields? They pretend that they had moved asbestos out of these schools on the south side of Chicago. They spent $800,000 prior to him becoming mayor in one school, and it can be documented right out here on the far south side of Chicago. Come to find out, the company, they said they couldn't do anything because the company had gone out of business. They didn't know where to find the people. But you could get rid of $800,000 removing asbestos that was still there. You can go to 115th Street. 115th Street, they turn it over to that ASUL garbage package that they're feeding in the city of Chicago. I'm curious, is it true that the mayor's wife, prior to Bloomberg ever showing up in Chicago, had a direct line to putting these so-called chartered schools, that's her pet, these chartered schools, but yet and still big business owned the charter school. It's just like privatizing the prisons. It costs more to incarcerate than it does to educate any child in the city of Chicago. You have principals, they'll say, well, they can't get any money. That's the biggest lie in the world, because they were able, it was one principal was able to take $1 million out of the budget because he knew how to manipulate, because federal funds don't roll over.
Wow.
So when a parent begins to tell you that, the parents need to do something, the parents can't do it by themselves. It has to be an even playing school. They need to offer activities. Some of the money that they waste with their friends padding budgets, they could put into after-school programs and give these kids some jobs. Everybody wants to eat.
So you're saying we need to deal with this?
You have to sit up under the Buddha tree to be enlightened? Well, somebody needs to enlighten the city of Chicago.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It's talking about dealing with this issue of relative deprivation, the uneven distribution of prestige, and so on across the city. Randy, we're going to take another caller. Is that okay with you? Are you still with us, Randy?
Oh yeah, I'm loving to hear this. I'm
Excellent.
really enjoying this.
Excellent. Caller, thank you so much for calling. You're on with Dr. Peter K.B. Seja and Randy Sargent. They're in Buffalo, New York.
Picked on the wrong person. If you don't want your child to go to Chicago public school, guess what? You don't have to send them there, because there's a such thing as called scholarships. One parent able to get a scholarship for my daughter. Now, only thing you have to do is make sure your child has the skills and the ability to get one of those scholarships, because we live in one of the best places in the country where parents do have a choice. What you do is you bring your child up to the standard. And the problem is with the Chicago public schools is they let them play this 3-card Monte game, whatever, all right? If you don't want your child to go there, there are options. There are schools out here right now, they are begging for children of color that have the ability. And a lot of times these parents, they won't even fill out the paperwork. There's money out there, but they don't want to do they don't do the research. They spend more time researching the car or in terms of getting an apartment, in terms of finding out what type of educational options they have. Now, you got a lot of people out there talking about the selective enrollment school, all right? And people have problems with that. If you want your child to have a choice, you want to have a choice in terms of education, bring them up to the standard. That's the problem with them. A lot of these folks thinking these selective enrollment school is wrong, that all the schools should be the same. And they think because they child sick next to a smart one, somehow they're going to get an education. No. The problem is you got these folks out here right now, they're coming up with all these damn different options and stuff, and some folks got the idea you can't entertain them, you can't educate them. Now they try to come up with all these different computer-generated images so they for them to learn. They need to put their book in. They need to put their nose in the book and learn.
So you're saying, caller, that the parents need to be more participatory in the lives of the children and give them the good start. Well, thank you so much for the contribution. We have about a couple more minutes. Okay. I want to give Randy, thank you so much for calling. Call us again next week, okay? Randy, so what are your reactions to this? Let's start off with the first caller. What did that call a couple calls ago, what did it remind you about in this conversation in Baltimore?
I believe we talked about me coming to a paradigm shift that I had.
Right.
I actually had a conviction of my own, basically, that it's not enough just to say there's a problem or to march, like she was saying, to do marches and protests. We all know there's a problem, but it's getting to the root of that problem. You know, it seems like all of our efforts, even my walk at that point, was to only show that, listen, there's a problem here. But we all know that. They know that. They're the ones who have a huge hand in causing the problem. We know there's a problem, but what can we do to get to the root of the problem? And
yes,
I know we talked about many things that night, but I know that was one of those.
Yes, and one of the things as we wind up there is a simple law of physics that energy follows attention. So whatever it is that you give your attention to, that is more of what you get. That's why the war on drugs and the war on this and the war on poverty is not working, because war on nothing wins anything. But if you find the solutions, we know a lot about why people fail. And when you study failure, you know more about failure. The challenge here is to study more and to learn more about success and the things that you can do. As the previous caller said, how even in those kinds of conditions, we can create a better world for children. And how we study how people succeed in places like Buffalo, New York, like Chicago. And how do we put that in a bottle and sell it and multiply it many times? That is kind of where the action is. Randy, you have a few seconds here to say some final words.
Yes, I would like to say, based on the other caller as well.
You have to be very quick. Just do this in 10 seconds. Just basically all you have is time to thank people for listening to you. Go for it.
I just thank you for the opportunity to come on air, share my story. I thank you for the relationship that we have and all that you do in the community. And Chicago's blessed to have you there. So thank you so much, and God bless you.
God bless you too, Randy. You're looking at the Peaceful World Movement in Focus. Your host, Dr. Peter K.B. St. Jean. Here, finishing up I think it's the show before the last in this segment, talking to Randy Sargent from Buffalo, New York. Thank you so much for watching.
Night and retiring to bed. Mama was expecting all her children, when suddenly she heard the phone ring. Her son was on the phone. He said, Mama, you just got to get me out of jail. And like all mothers, she will. She just got up and went straight to the police station. She told the sergeant, me never raise him, me never raise him, me never raise him. So somewhere along the line, my son got messed up. You in the wrong crowd.